everyone. I'm from Tech Systems. I've met most of you, but I'm an account manager with Tech Systems. So we've been supporting you guys here for a little while, and we provide pizza. And if anyone's interested in what job markets look like, we're happy to talk. So excellent. Excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. One more positive, we love the pizza. Yeah. So, are there any announcements before we begin?
We have one for us,
Okay.
not next month. Oh wait, no, this is many months down the road. July will be a social for us. So back in January, we kind of all went out to eat, and we'll be doing that again in July. And we still are looking for speakers too. I believe the next one's August is the opening, I believe, if anyone's interested.
Brandon raised his hand.
Yeah, you actually did.
Tonight will be September.
I know where you live. You will present.
I know where you live too.
Yeah, and I already present next month. Well, 2 months from now, my bad.
IPv6.
Oh, IPv6 is next month. Which we have a networking expert over here, and I missed that class in college, so I need it.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Other announcements. Right. No hiring announcements. Meeting announcements. Okay. Great. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to our other guest of honor for this evening, James Petty, who is going to wonderfully share with us all of his knowledge. It's going to be a giant brain dump on PowerShell and how it can make our lives better. Let's give a round of applause for our speaker.
Hey, sorry for being just a few minutes late, but I had to put one kid to bed, and if you really want to know other details, you can ask Wes.
I may or may not have said that or repeated that you were putting your kid down, and everyone.
Yeah, we're like, maybe phrase this different.
Yeah, well, I've got one kid up on the couch watching Paw Patrol, so.
Okay.
All right. How do I do this? And share this one. I'm gonna put this over here. So I'm in the process of moving for the third time in 6 months. So my desk is not all set up. So I don't have all my monitors, but I think we're doing good. All right. So I didn't catch anyone's names other than Wes, but like they said, come on, you can do it. My name is James Petty. I'm the director of IT for Text Request. We're a business text messaging service out of Chattanooga. I'm also a 4-time Microsoft Azure MVP, and I have 2 books on PowerShell, shockingly enough. First one is Learn PowerShell in the Month of Lunches, and the second one, just this week, I need to get a new graphic because my newest book, Learn PowerShell Scripting in a Month of Lunches, just came out of Meep, and it is like physically being printed as we speak. So I need to get an updated graphic for that. I'm on most of the socials here at PS James P, and then all of the, so this is my the GitHub, and of course everything, including the PowerPoint and the code and everything we do will be posted up to GitHub later tonight in my presentations repo. All right, well, it'll be on GitHub. It just won't be, it'll be here. We'll do that. Okay. So that's where it'll be. Other than that, I can't really see the room that well, so Wes will probably have to kind of reiterate, but I just do kind of like to get a form or an understanding of what people's familiarity with PowerShell is kind of in the room. So that way I kind of know, do I need to kind of dig down a little bit into topics, or do we already know what things like execution policy are? So I don't know.
I think everyone's a Linux admin.
There's a lot of Linux folks in here.
Oh, perfect. Well, so funny enough,
he can speak for himself. He does not, in fact, speak for me.
I forgot it there.
So funny enough, about 90% of what we're going to talk about works on Linux just fine. And depending on the time, I'll actually show you how you can we'll get PowerShell up and running on, well, you'll have to do it on your own, but I'll show you what PowerShell up and running on a Linux box and show you how we can SSH from a Linux box to a Windows box and vice versa, help make your life a lot easier. All right, so a couple of other things, some nomenclature things we want to make sure that we are level setting all on the same playing field. So when we talk about PowerShell, there's actually two versions of PowerShell. There's Windows PowerShell, which is version 5.1. That's the latest release. It came out with Server 2012 R2. And that is kind of the iterations of PowerShell. PowerShell v1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.1 being the last. And all of that is built on the whole hog .NET framework. Notice that no investment has been made into it, has been put into 5.1 since around 2014 mark, outside of a few kind of 0-day high vulnerability security patches. But for the most part, it is feature set. Or feature complete, I think is the word that Microsoft uses. They do not say the word deprecated. They do not say retired. They say feature complete. Anyways, what that means is they're not putting any more money into it. Now, with that being said, this is the version that is shipped on every laptop or every operating system, starting with I think 2008 R2 was the first version of the server that came out with PowerShell by default, and Windows 7 was the first operating system that came shipped with PowerShell. So now we move into the newest versions, what we simply just call PowerShell. The current version is 7.4. There might be a minor release in there at this point. It moves kind of fast. I kind of have a hard time keeping up. And then so PowerShell is built on the .NET Core framework. So it's a whole lot more condensed. It's a lot lighter weight. It's not 100% parity between Windows PowerShell. .NET framework and .NET Core are two separate things that they operate differently. But one of the best things is this also means, because .NET Core is cross-platform, meaning it can be installed on Linux or Mac or Windows, so can PowerShell. So we'll see a little bit of that a little bit later. So I want to make sure we have those nomenclatures kind of back and forth, the difference between Windows PowerShell and PowerShell. All right, this is one of my favorite slides because I like to send it to all the CISOs, or have people send it to their CISOs. PowerShell is not a virus, popular to contrary belief. I don't know if you have any cybersecurity analysts in the room, but from my experience, most straight out of college cybersecurity analysts don't really know their head from a hole in the ground. So they like to tell you they want to turn things off on their servers. They'll tell you it's perfectly okay to keep SSH on a server, but they'll tell you that you have to turn PowerShell off. And you're like, dude, they do the same thing. So then you get to have those arguments. So yes, PowerShell is a tool that bad guys can use, but it itself is not something that we should be excluding. We should be instead taking some best practices around how to better secure your environment, which is what we'll talk mostly about today. Two different processes that you should whitelist on any kind of monitoring system. Well, don't completely whitelist them because we want to know what they're doing if they're doing something. So first is PowerShell.exe. That's the Windows 5.1 platform, and then the PWSH.exe is just the PowerShell 7.x. I think the daemon that runs on the Linux or on the Linux boxes is just PWSH. Obviously, it doesn't have an exe extension, and the same with the Mac. Just a funny little picture here. The number of times, so I worked in federal government for 7 years, and the amount of times that we would get calls saying that we have viruses on our servers and we need to go remediate them. And we're like, okay, send me the report. We'll go take a look at it. And it was because PowerShell was running as intended, which is, it's a tool in a toolbox. So just like with any tool, if you use it correctly, it's great. And if you don't use it correctly, bad things can happen. So let's talk a little bit about this. First and foremost, most of what we can do around the PowerShell security is in a defensive posture. And the main reason for that is someone can get deep enough into your network whether it be through social engineering, sniffing tech, whatever. If they can get deep enough into the network to actually log onto a server with administrative credentials that can actually, get that UAC token on a server, that means you have bigger problems than the fact that they're using PowerShell. And here's why. So like we talked about, so PowerShell has been installed on every computer around the world since Windows 7 came out. It just hit its 11-year anniversary. Like it's already done. So it's hit the 10 years. So it's like 11 or 12 years now that has been out there. I think the only other application that has that stature is Notepad and maybe Calculator. So because of that, obviously PowerShell because it's already there on most of these machines or all these machines around the world, it's a great attack vector, and the bad guys like to take advantage of that, and that's a good thing. Now, some people may have just cringed, but hear me out. Bad guys are going to do bad things, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop them. Wouldn't you rather someone who's going to do something bad anyways do it with the tools that you left them, or would you rather them bring their own tools that you have no monitoring or anything around? So once I forgot, I think Jeffrey Snover, I think it was the one that started talking about that, and it kind of really started getting me thinking about it. I'm like, oh, okay. So like I said, taking back to my initial point, if someone already has, you get the administrative credentials on a server to be able to run PowerShell on a server anyways. I mean, you have to be able to get that UAC token. Whether I'm going to use PowerShell or not, your server's already pwned. So do you want me to bring my bastardized version of Python, or do you want me to use PowerShell? I want to use PowerShell because I can put my logging and stuff around it. That makes sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All right.
Oh,
Doesn't matter what you get in, if you get in, you're in.
All right. All right. So I said it is mostly a defensive strategy. We have one one play in our offensive playbook, and that comes with execution policy. So if we look at, I'm just gonna bounce back and forth. I really don't like slides. How do I make this bar go away? Does this button do it? That button does it. Okay. No, it doesn't. Go away. Sorry, I'm fighting with Zoom. Okay. So the set is called execution policy. So kind of a level set here. This is just a Windows 11 box, and then I have a domain controller, server 2022, and a 2022 member server. I have two of those, and then I have a Ubuntu box. So that's what my lab looks like, all running in Azure. So we're going to run just our command here, get execution policy, and we're going to see that my policy now is set to all sign. So what does all sign mean? Oh. Zoom, can this go over here? Yay. All right. So execution policy here, all sign. So all sign being the most restrictive. This means that anything that you run on your machine, here, I'm gonna get my cheat notes here so you can all see these. And yes, these cheat notes are printed as part of the slide as well. Basically requires that all the scripts and any PowerShell configuration files you have be signed from a trusted publisher. This means they have a code signing cert. And then that code signing cert is trusted whether that's from an internal CA that you have, or you get something from you get like a DigiCert or something. Now we'll put a pin in this because while I said it is the most restrictive, it's also really easy to get around. We'll go with bypass here in a minute because that's exactly what I was talking about. All right, so let's talk about the defaults that we have. For most of what you're going to do, and even the CIS standards and CIS, I forgot what the other big player in the game is. But they agree that the default settings for PowerShell, if you're going to turn them on, are pretty okay. That is for Windows clients. So this is the Windows client operating system, Windows 10 and 11. It's going to be set to restricted, and on Windows Server, it's going to be set to remote signed. What do these mean? That was a great question. So remote sign means that the scripts or anything that you have, if you write them locally on the server, it means that you don't have to have them signed. But if you're going to download them from the interweb, that means that they have to be signed by a trusted publisher and have that code signing cert. And you're probably asking, well, how do you know if we got it from the internet? Well, it's because, as I'm sure most of you security folks in the room know, when you download something from the internet, there's this little thing called metadata. And one of those little tags that looks at is the location that it came from. So the server knows if your file came from the internet or not. Really, the only way around that is to download it from the internet, open in Notepad, save that Notepad file as a text file, and then change the extension to a .ps1. That will then get rid of that metadata. If you were so inclined to get around that. But that's how the server knows that it was not written locally or written inside your network. And then restricted just means we don't load any configuration files or scripts when we start PowerShell up, but we can run just about anything. You know, if we download it from the internet, we can run it. If we run it, get it from a UNC path on our network, we can run it. Undefined, this is the default for Linux and Mac because Linux and Mac don't have a concept of essentially UAC is essentially what we're using to be able to do these. They don't have a concept of UAC, so they're set as undefined. So basically, that also means that we run in unrestricted. So this is the least restrictive. Now, I'm gonna have someone, Wes may have to relate how many hands are up, but how many of you, the first thing you do when you open up PowerShell console is just set your execution policy unrestricted because you don't want to be bothered by all the things. I see hands. Yep. You don't want to be bothered by all the security practices. I'm sure there's people who also have their hands up, are also the same ones when UAC came out with Windows XP and Windows 7. They just took that slider and went all the way to the left and said, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Yep, I did. Yep, I did that. As annoying as it is, so this execution policy is the only play in our offensive playbook in trying to keep bad people from doing bad things, including yourself. The fun thing about PowerShell, it does precisely what you tell it to do, nothing more and nothing less, but it also does not ask you to confirm if you think you have it right. So sometimes this can save you from yourself. Anyway, so leave it as is. You can set whatever you want to be via GPO. That's going to be the easiest. Obviously, if you're on a Linux or a Mac, you're going to have to use something else like a puppet configuration file, or I think Chef is still a thing, or Satellite. You got to do something Ansible, something to be able to set. Oh, never mind. It's undefined anyways. Ignore what I just said about Linux and Mac. Yeah. Anyway, so you can set this on a 1-by-1 basis, or you can set it as a GPO. And then another thing to note is that a lot of times these also are scope based. We really won't get into scope as far as what a scope is, but we can see here. I think I got Windows Terminal. Oh, what are you doing? Well, I don't know what's going on. Okay. That's going to run, and we'll come back and see that in a minute. Let's see here. No, because I need you to come back. You want to run assignment? Yes. All right. So we see here. There we go. All right. So we see here, get execution policy. We're set here, set to all sign. We're going to set our execution policy here. That's our verb here is set. And we're just going to change this to remote sign. So we'll take a look at that. Okay. What is it not like? Okay. So what I had to do here, I don't know why I should have done it on its own, but there's actually different scopes here, set scopes that we talked about here. Local machine kind of being my machine itself. And then the current user scope is the one I was trying to modify. We can see here that it was set to all signed. And then now if I look at it again, so up here, we did our set execution policy and we changed it to remote sign. So now it's here set to remote sign. And then I can go back over here to VS Code and we can see it will, obviously it's honoring. Well, I'd have to close the session and be able to reopen it in order to grab those new changes. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to run my code if I don't, but we'll try. All right, so talking about our security policies here. So we kind of talked about, we saw those a little bit. So the local machines that is kind of how it is set up on your machine as a whole. So regardless of who logs into it, usually by default, you might want to change that to the most restrictive, because if Jane from accounting for some reason decides that she logs into your computer, she doesn't need to have a less restrictive form of PowerShell that she can have access to. So you can set that on their current user. Again, you can do this via GPO, and then from there you can whittle that down back to whoever it needs to be, based on global groups. And then we have our process here, so you can actually assign processes, different processes, the ability to have different execution policies. This would be kind of another level. You could say all processes are going to have this except for, and there are quite a few applications out there that do utilize PowerShell on the back end to do internal kind of processing things, because PowerShell is already there, so they don't have to ship another language there. I'm being completely honest with you. I really don't understand why there's a user policy and machine policy, because they do the same thing as the current user and in the local machine. So those are the 5 security policies, or the 5 security scopes. There we go. That you can set, and again, each one of these can have their own execution policy depending on who's logging in and what's running.
A quick question.
Yeah.
Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core share the same execution settings?
They do not. So here I have PowerShell. This is PowerShell. PS. That's not what I'm looking for. PS Edition. Yeah. So we can see.
PS version table?
That's what I'm looking for. So we see here I have a 5.1. Side tangent. Everybody knows about Windows Terminal, right? And how awesome it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, so we can do get execution policy here. And we see here, I did the bad thing. I set it to unrestricted. So we do have the same, 5 scopes, and we have the same 7 options that we had before, but because they are actually different processes, as far as the computer is concerned, these do not cross.
No.
So you need to make sure, if you're going to do this via GPO, make sure you set it for 5 and 7. Hopefully you're running, anybody running 7 like in production, like widespread? Or is it like just on your machine, or is it just everyone lives in Windows PowerShell? So the good news is everything we're doing here is going to be, except from like the very last sentence of what we're going to be doing, works in 5.1 or 7. All right. So any other questions before we move on? Seeing none. All right. What we're going to do here is I actually have to close VS Code, because was still set to all signed. So I wasn't going to be able to run anything. All right, so let's talk about all signed, and I'm going to give you James's personal opinion. You can take it for exactly what it's worth, which that and 50 cents might get you a stick of bubble gum down at the hardware store. Just making sure we got remote sign. Okay. So here is the bad, not the bad thing. Here's the downfall of all signed. Is yes, it sounds great. It's super restrictive. I have to have a code signing cert. I can do whatever I want. Until you realize that someone can do, actually, let me go here. This, let me get on the right machine. So here it is. So I have command prompt here.
Mhm.
Yep. It's something like this is not going to run because the syntax is not correct, but the point still comes across. Yeah, I could do something like this. From the command line, I can start a PowerShell process and I can tell it to use a bypass flag on the execution policy. And now your execution policy doesn't mean anything because I bypassed it. Said that is kind of why we're like, okay, because I can bypass it, let's just kind of keep it down with the basics. It's kind of the same thing. Anybody here drive a Jeep? A Jeep Wrangler to be very specific.
We had one Jeep, but no Wrangler.
So let's pretend you had a Jeep and you had a really nice stereo system in it, and you had your soft shell cover on, the thing that costs like $4,000 new. People with Jeeps don't lock doors because it's more expensive to replace the soft shell cover that comes on than it is to replace the radio. So it's kind of the same thing. I have this really cool tool and it looks really good. And I can even lock the doors if I want, but it's really easy for someone to just come and, if I had it said on the Jeep and just cut that fabric back and steal my radio. If they really want to get in, they can break my window. So what's this? What do they say? Locks only keep the honest criminals out.
Mhm.
Anyway, so that's why that's kind of why all signed. It will stop like 98% of bad attackers, so it's not a bad idea. Just know that there is a way around it. So we're gonna have to put some other defensive tactics in here, so we can kind of start trying to figure out. So we can start analyzing when these things happen.
So,
Your question?
question on it, James. So
Yeah.
for all sign versus remote sign, the PowerShell or PWSH binary is still going to be signed by Microsoft. So wouldn't they effectively be the same in that regard? Because it sounds like all sign is just using the PowerShell binary as code sign.
Yeah. So all signed. So remote signed, meaning if I write a module internally or I write a script to do something, that does not have to be signed by CA. If I'm set to all signed, even if I wrote it myself, I still have to go through and sign it.
Yeah, but you were saying with it being all sign, you can just run from command line on bypass mode.
Yep.
Settings apply to the scripts, not the executables. It's like if you can run a signed script or not if nothing to do with the executable itself.
It's been a hot minute for me, but what execution policy prevents you from running bypass?
Nothing. That's sometimes there was a really dumb idea and you're like, oh, that's a great idea. And you're like, after the fact, you're like, no, that was a terrible idea, but there's nothing you can do to fix it. You just have to live with it.
Yeah.
This is one of those.
So who do we get to blame for that one?
Security does.
I do not know. Read Don Shelvin idea. There might be a chapter in there about it.
No, okay. So basically though, execution policy, honest criminals out, but still at the end of the day, if you have admin on the box, you're already pwned, so it's run as bypass and you're fine.
Exactly. So that's why we're gonna start talking about we're gonna start the defensive part. How do we kind of start tracking some of those things?
Gotcha.
All right. I have some demos. I don't know, what do they do? Oh, so this is what a code signing block looks like. We're not actually going to look at code signing because I don't have a CA set up in my environment. And for some reason, my self-signed certificates have stopped working. They were working just fine when I started giving this presentation like 6 months ago. And since then, I have done something to my lab and now code sign, whenever I try to create a new self-signed certificate and sign my code with it, it doesn't work. it pulls out an error, and then at some point it's just I haven't had a chance to fix it. But this is what code signing. This is kind of if you were going to go the code signing route, you can just add this to your build, add this to your build pipeline. So basically, this is so I created a script or created a cert here. This is we'll just try it. We'll watch it not work. So we're going to create a cert here. We're going to call it code signing 45. So what I've done is I just created it. Okay, see, that's not even. Oh. So we're just creating a code signing cert here. So this is again, so self-signed certificate. This is a terrible idea. Do not do this in your production environment. This is for demo purposes only. All right, we see here thumbprint ending in 29. And then what we have to do is we have to take our code. So, and then you get to use the set authentication code signature command here. Oh, I wonder if I think that might actually be my problem. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, I already have start. So let me just do this. No, I want to make sure that you all have a working demo. All right. So I already have certs stored in another location. Just to make sure, back from my previous screen, just to make sure it's still there. Okay. So it may actually work now. That's $5 on file. Okay. And then demo 2. All right, so this is a quick little function that you would put inside of your release pipeline. Let's see if it's going to work. All right, anyway. Hence error that I keep getting. Anyway, so this is what it would do. This is what it would do. It would spit out this nice little signature block. It is using a bunch of different pieces of metadata to be able to generate this. So what happens is I can't come in and change something, because part of what it's using is using the file hash. So if I were to change this 9 to a 10 and save it, the file hash on the file has now changed, which now makes this whole code signature block not valid. So therefore the code wouldn't run if you wanted to do that. Again, so James's 2 cents, again, I said that and 50 cents will get you a stick of bubble gum somewhere. Maybe 75 cents these days. But it is in my opinion that code signing certs are really not worth their time because it requires an extensive, CA certificate authorities are not an easy thing to set up, and they're not an easy thing to maintain, and they usually require a dedicated team to be able to administer them. So if you're running a small shop and you don't already have this big robust infrastructure, going to DigiCert is obviously not going to be worth your time because these things run $3,000 and $4,000, and they're only good for 2 years. Code signing certs are only valid for 2 years, and they cannot be renewed, which takes us into the next problem of
James, the cap form reduces it to 1 year.
Oh, is it 1? Even worse. So anyway, so the point is that they can't be renewed. So if I have this script, I have to open this script up at least once a year now, and go through and save it and re-sign it. And if I have hundreds or even thousands of scripts that have been code signed, even through an automated process, this still, you can see kind of how daunting that can be.
Actually, no. So I think I was wrong on the 1 year, but specifically, I do know you don't have to resign them each year. You have to timestamp them through a valid timestamp server. So like DigiTrust and or DigiCert and Entrust, they both have timestamping servers that you use, and I've done that with like normal XE code signing. So that's the main element that you're missing there.
Oh yeah, interesting. All right, yeah. Anyways, like I said, I don't like code signing certs. There are the other half of the PowerShell people. This is one of those things like Ford and Chevy. Some people hate Chevy and some people love Ford and some people hate Ford and love Chevy. It's the same thing here. They're both trucks. They both get you where they're going to go. One might have more problems. One might need tires faster, whatever. Anyway, so that's code signing certs. And I'll get off of that soapbox. All right. Up next, we're going to talk about, what is this one? Remoting. Okay. I don't have any slides for this one, so we'll kind of breeze through it. There's really not much to talk about. And that's what we're going to, so here's what you need to do. Tomorrow, when you get into the office, you need to do this. You can do this on a per server basis, or you can do this with a GPO. It's a fancy little here thing called start transcript. Now, this is where we started talking about. Remember, someone's on your server and they're going to do bad things, and the execution policy is not really going to stop them. It's just going to slow them down. Well, start transcript is your next best friend, because here's why. If we take start transcript and we just use the GPO and we can tell this to turn this on. Here, let's just go ahead and run it here. What this is going to do, as you can see here, this is going to keep a text file, and it's going to anything that is ran on the machine, whether by an automated process or by a human. It's going to output that information to a log file. In this instance, we just let it we let it use its own name. You can mention here. You use the date and the timestamp in a .txt file, and whatever I write, I usually can't type and talk at the same time. Whatever I'm typing here in the screen, it's going to save that here to a text file. Here, it looks. I have a few on here, so I want to make sure I get the right one. Today is this one. So not only is it telling me all the information about the person who started the transcript, so my name is Bob. The start time, who I'm logged in as, the configuration name. We're not really going to talk about configuration names, but if I connect it to remote configuration, what version of PowerShell I'm running, all these little good things, and then it said, well, this looks familiar. That's everything I just typed out to the screen. So what you can do is you need to turn this on, and then if you are fortunate enough to have some kind of a SIM, whether it be a Splunk, a LogLogic, Datadog, Azure Analytics, something, just tell it to come and suck these files up every so often, so that now you can start analyzing these transcript files and using the built-in logic that all of these SIMs have. You can start kind of proactively looking for anomalies. Like, is someone, one of the telltale signs that you have a bad person in your network is someone is going to run get AD user a lot. And now, if you're an Exchange admin or a domain admin or in the help desk or someone, get AD user is probably a very valid command for you to run and run it often. It is not a valid command if you're Susie from accounting. Like, why is, everyone has access to has read access to the AD. That's exactly the point of it. So anybody in the world or anybody in your infrastructure can run get AD user because they have the rights to be able to read from Active Directory. So you can start picking up on these anomalies, like someone running, trying to figure out who's in domain admins groups. What are the names of the groups? You're going to start running these kind of things. So you can start picking up on that logic. Or you can also, and the most importantly, stop transcript. If someone is kind of coming through and they've done something, now we have a transcript of exactly what they did, when they did it, what commands they ran, how, what process it was used. And more importantly, we can undo, because we know exactly what they did, we can come through and undo a lot of the damage that they did. Does that kind of make sense to everyone? Remember, we talked about, I want the bad guys to use my tools, and this is why, because I can turn on transcript and I can see everything that they've done.
There was a question in the chat there about sensitive items in the transcript.
Let's see here. If you, oh, sorry. Anything that gets put to the screen is going to get recorded to that log. Now, PowerShell will kind of obfuscate some things by itself. Like if something is a secure string, obviously it's not going to display the password but anything that gets displayed to that screen is going to get written in that text file. That makes sense, Ben?
Can that information be transmitted like to syslog or something real time, or does it have to have some operation of moving the file?
You need to have some operation to move that file because it's going to generate this text file.
Gotcha.
Some log collectors will just have the ability to basically tail a text file and suck that in.
Or you can always use you can use old school method and just create a scheduled task that runs every 10 or 15 minutes and copies. I've seen some people do that. Like, I don't have Splunk. Splunk's too expensive. I'm like, well, okay, let's at the very least, let's write all this here to a UNC path, some server somewhere, and then you can actually use PowerShell to come through and start parsing those logs and start looking for anomalies and stuff. It's a lot more difficult, but you can do it. Now, I will say, save this locally. You can change where this goes. Everybody's heard, path secured, the motto security through obscurity. So I can put this wherever I want on the machine. It doesn't, the default there is just happens to, goes to my documents. Do not save this to a network location. Jacob, I'll get back to that in a minute. So don't save this to a network location, because if that network location is offline, PowerShell is going to get hung up trying to connect. And if it can't connect, then nothing's going to happen. It's just going to start spinning its wheels. Then you have to open it up with a no profile and the whole 9 yards. Yeah, so save it locally and then have some kind of a collector come through. So Jacob says, if the person is aware you have transcript on the first command, access would be used to stop transcript. That's where you'd want to turn it on by GPO. So at the very least, it will turn itself back on. So yeah, I mean, the first command they could run is stop transcript, but your GPO should come back and trigger that. And trigger that soon. Or if you have something on Ansible or DSC or something, it will come back and turn it back on faster.
For example, would you have to do start transcript on both Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core?
Yep. Yeah. Again, you got to do it on both. All right. Let's see.
Automatically hook any new processes that are spun up for either.
All right. What time do we normally end? I think I took a little more time explaining code signing cert, so I didn't want to dive into the next topic because it's about a 20-minute topic, so I didn't want to keep anybody. I didn't know if we had kind of a hard stop at 8 or if everyone wanted to keep going.
It's kind of a soft stop, especially since we started a little bit later. So I would say probably like 8:15 at the latest. Okay.
I can kind of I can kind of speed through this next part here.
Okay.
Yeah, so the next thing that we're talking about security. This is it. This is all the built-in security that PowerShell has. We can turn on transcripts, and we have execution policy and security scopes. That's really about it. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is Windows remoting. Now I have a whole session on Windows remoting. I can always come back later in the year and do that, or you can go check out. I've done it a couple times for the Research Triangle PowerShell user group. You can find that on YouTube. But taking some of these security practices that we have and putting them here into practice using PowerShell remoting. So we'll kind of breeze through a little bit of this. Windows PowerShell remoting is my favorite. It's my favorite part of PowerShell, because it allows you to connect to one machine, or you can connect to hundreds of machines at the same time and execute the same command. So Windows PowerShell uses the WinRM protocol. It's a really long and interesting story behind about why it used WinRM and not SSH to begin with. Go get Don Jones's Shell of an Idea if you really want to know exactly why WinRM was chosen. But anyways, that runs on port 5985. So that runs, it's just an HTTP request, or 5986 for HTTPS. Again, certificates are really not that great for WinRM, because WinRM is in itself already encrypted for the most part. Like, it's not clear text. Or the other options that we have running PowerShell, we still use the built-in WinRM. That's still the default for now. Or we had the ability to use SSH using Microsoft's OpenSSH platform that they have been developing a lot. And of course, obviously, that uses port 22, makes a lot of our cybersecurity people happy. Do yourself a favor and then yes, enable SSH on your Windows servers for sure. All right, so really the only difference here, that's the last slide. We'll come back. So we'll just come down here. So the first thing we have to do is, if you don't have remoting enabled on, it is not enabled by default on Windows clients or Windows servers. So again, do this via GPO. It's going to be a whole lot easier. Use the PowerShell command, enable PS remoting, or you can also use WinRM QC or WinRM quick config if you're still holding on to CMD for dear life. That is also your command. It will do the same thing. Now, I don't have an example of this, but you do have the ability with WinRM to do IP restricting. The default is ***, which means allow incoming requests from any IP address known to man. You can further restrict this down. I do suggest that you do this. Restrict it down to a specific subnet to allow incoming requests to come from. When I was with TVA, we did this. You had to be on a specific floor of a specific building in order to be able to remote into any of the servers. So it means you couldn't do it from home. You couldn't do it from your Citrix box. You couldn't do it from the next building over. You had to be on a floor of a building of our data center building to be able to remote in the servers. So that was kind of our compromise, our cybersecurity department, to be able to restrict that down. So if I want to get into a machine, we use enter PS session. This allows me to open up an interactive session here. We can see here, we know I'm remoting because I have here on my console, the far left-hand screen, or my terminal, the server name is here in brackets. I can also run the command host name. I'm in my remote server. And this is basically like I'm sitting at the keyboard of a machine. I can run anything I want. So again, the default is connecting. I don't have PowerShell 7 installed on the machine, but even if I did, even if I'm in PowerShell 7, the default still goes to the 5.1 endpoint. Now, this is not that great. Well, this is great for troubleshooting, so I'm a huge fan of Server Core. I run all my boxes on Server Core. This is a Server Core box. It doesn't have a GUI. All my domain controllers, print servers, file servers, servers don't deserve to have a GUI. They deserve to be a black blinking box. But so this is a one-to-one. So if you want to do a one-to-many, we use the command or invoke command, and then we can use the computer name. And it's also, so this accepts an array of objects. And then it gets a script block here. Oh, it's not, yeah, I don't have, it can't loop back to itself. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stop that. Loop. So basically, I give this an array of objects. This could be anything. You could read it from a text file. You can read it from a text file here. You can also run, my favorite was get a do. I can't remember the command top of my head, but I would run a command against AD computer. And then I would give it a filter of You give it an OU, but I would do name like star, like all of my SCCM servers had SCCM in the name, so I could do get filter name like SCCM star. It would then return an array of objects, you know, all the good things, and then run whatever I wanted, 1 and 2 in my script block. So, but again, this is all using this uses WinRM. So the difference between the two here is we think, well, I thought we could do SSH. Notice my parameter here, computer name. Dash computer name parameter means use WinRM. It's not very intuitive. It is not use SSL parameter means use a certificate. It means connect to WinRM over HTTPS port 5986. If I want to use SSH, I use the host name parameter. They change it to a different parameter set. We can see here, I am now going to connect via SSH. Do I want to accept the SSH key? Yes, I do. And now we can see assuming I type the password right. Yep. I am now connected to my domain controller via SSH and not WinRM. And one of the telltale signs here is that we can see I hit my the 7.3.6 version of PowerShell. Same thing. I can also use the exact same command. I can use the exact same host name parameter here, connect via SSH. And then now, assuming I can remember my password. I think I had to give it an IP address. Oh, wait a minute. We still have a double hop method. We still can't go from a server to a server. That's not going to work because this is not the right username. But it means DNS is working. All right, so there is a credential flag here that we have to use. So by default, it is going to use whoever you're logged in as. If you want to pass a different credential here, you can do that. I think I'm James at Ubuntu. I don't remember my account name. Oh, there it is. Oh, super admin. That might explain. All right. All right. Anyways, so I don't know what is my Ubuntu machine is obviously breaking, but what I was hoping to show was that I went from a Windows box to a Ubuntu box, but we can see I had some kind of an issue and no time to debug it. If you want to know more about PowerShell or installing OpenSSH for PowerShell 7, Thomas here has a fantastic blog article on how to do that. You can also, so you can do it yourself. There's a long list of things you have to change, or you can install this module. This is cross-platform, runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. And then you simply enable this command, enable SSH, or run this command, enable SSH remoting, and it makes all of these changes for you to be able to have SSH install to run. So you have to install the server and the client so that you can send and receive, but it does all of this for you by doing this. So that if not, so Thomas has a step-by-step guide with how to do that, along with nice, pretty pictures. And of course, like Ben said, SSH is far superior to WinRM. So if you had the chance, go check that out. If not, I think you can use localhost and you can make a circular motion. I kind of breezed through that that was about a 20-minute segment, and I think we went about 6 minutes, but any questions from the gallery?
For SSH, can you do multiple at the same time, like in parallel, and issue a set of commands to a group of hosts? Kinda like
Yes,
a-
that's what. Yeah, you can use that with this invoke command.
Okay.
So that I could run this here. Obviously, you'd want to use. I don't have SSH keys set up. You would. There's a way to do that with SSH keys. I don't exactly know. Anyway, but yeah, that's what this invoke command. Typing my password in wrong, but this invoke command allows you to do multiple. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like it.
Perfect. Well, hope that was informative. Sorry, I know this is a reschedule, I think, from December, but glad to finally. I was planning on being there in person. Life doesn't always happen the way you want it to, but at least we had Zoom.
Thank you very, very much, James. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'll get all this zipped up and added up to GitHub here. I gotta go put my other daughter to bed, so after she's in bed, I'll get it all uploaded to GitHub and all those good things.
Thanks, James.
All right, that's very nice.
You go ahead and press stop on it.
Again, thank you very much.
Right,
Those
no problem. I